What's up, folks? This is Richie, and this is the first episode of The Flip Side with Richie Flip. First podcast. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I feel like I need to find a way to just get some things off my chest, off just the weight of the world on me at times, and share some things with you, but also keep it light, right? The kind of the flip side piece of it. So I don't plan on doing a whole lot of production, at least not right now. That could change down the road. Really, I'm using my camera right now on the phone only because I wanted to get it started right away. But if I did add some intro music, here's how it would sound. Right, not bad. That's actually me on the guitar. I've used that for other things, other endeavors I've started. We'll get into that. But, you know, I'm using this as a platform because I feel like I just don't have a voice at times. Let's understand something. And I would like to think there's a lot, not that there are probably a lot of other people in my position, guys and gals out there for different reasons. For me, I'm 50 plus, 53 years old. That's an eye opener because, father time doesn't stop for anybody, right? So it's the reality of that and knowing that, you're closer to the finish line than the start line. And that's just the reality of it. And how do we kind of just cope with that? And what do we do? Because you're not thinking about this stuff when you're 20, 30, maybe even 40 years old, right? I think about it a lot now for a lot of different reasons. But as far as, why am I calling this the flip side? What's the point of it? Well, my nickname is Flip, Richie Flip. My dad's nickname, even in the yearbook, his nickname was Flip. So it's just kind of natural because of the last name we have. That's it, Italian last name, it just Flip was a nice little nickname, basically. But the flip side meaning some different things. We're going to talk about different things here. There's going to be some serious things that I want to talk about, just life in general. But I look at the flip side as, some of the lighter things in life that I do. What am I into? Music, guitar, sports, just things in general that, are kind of more lighthearted than the hardcore stuff I probably will be talking about at times. But also, I just love, certain terms, the flip-flop, it's a CB term, at least it was, CB radios are kind of going away these days. But, the flip-flop, little things like that just kind of, I don't know, I've always kind of had a connection to these types of words, right? So, and again, I'm going to apologize. This camera setup is not going to be the norm, but I didn't want to wait to just, until I had the right equipment. I wanted to make sure I kind of can just start with talking about things, get it out there, and then worry about production and things like that later on. I think I'd be better suited for that. I don't really have anything scripted. I've got some notes in front of me, just reminders to talk about certain things. I don't plan on this being a scripted type of podcast. I want to keep it real. I just want to kind of go off the cuff at times. And that's really what I want to do here. I mean, I've done a lot of other things. I've actually had a podcast at one point. It just didn't work out. But I have my hands in a lot of different things, and I think it's maybe too many at a time. And this podcast can bring it together in a way, right? I'm a musician, quote unquote. But I play in a cover band now. I've played in cover bands in the past, kind of like the weekend warrior type of thing, if you want to call it that. But, I've got to, and again, I was thinking about saying this and then not saying it and then saying, here's my shameless plug. No, there's nothing shameless about what I'm about to tell you. I've worked very hard for certain things. And if people want to follow me and check it out, awesome. If not, it's cool. You don't have to. But I've got a channel on YouTube where I do guitar lessons and tutorials. It's called Richie's Music Corner. I changed the name. It initially was Six String Fun, and I just changed that up recently. But I've got that. I've got a channel for just trucks, 18-wheelers. I mean, all the traveling I've done, and I have a channel for travel as well. You'd be amazed the amount of people that have an interest in looking at, some hard, not the newer rigs, but the stuff from the, the 70s, 80s, even maybe some of the 90s. I got one view. It was a short. It was 5 or 6 seconds. I got 2 million views. So you never can tell what's going to grab people's attention. But I thought this could be a good place to kind of throw some of this together and talk about things like that. Like I said, and there were other things I want to talk about. I have to be very careful about how I discuss them. One day I hope I can tell you a lot of things that are going on right now. The timing just isn't right. I would say I need another year another year, 14 months to really be able to do that. Um, you know, single father, with a daughter, and it's hard. Um, Communication is terrible at times, and at least I'm doing everything I can to try to make it work, make it better, and it's not easy. So, um, and even though there are things in black and white that say, "Hey, this is how it's supposed to be," I still don't get it, basically. Um, but that's okay. I still think, eventually down the road things work out the way they're supposed to. And it's funny, with everything that's going on, and again, we're all probably, life is hard for all of us. I don't care what you say. There's different levels of it and different meanings of it to everyone. I'm working several jobs. I got my 9 to 5. I got another job as a delivery driver with a pizza place, which is actually, it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite jobs ever because in the city where I live, it helped me when I started that gig. It showed me around all the neighborhoods and the town. So it's been great. I love that. I've got the band thing going on. I try to, dabble with stuff online, the podcasting, which I'm starting, the music, like I said, music and YouTube stuff. And even, again, shameless plug, but it's not shameless. I wrote a book, self-published my own book. There's me on the back. Yep, real deal. Okay. It's called Meeting Uncle Jake. I kind of just went with my, I didn't want to put my real name on the cover for now, but, Jay Richie. And, so proud of myself for doing that, right? It's actually, if you go to Amazon, you can look it up. It's there. Crazy to think that, I can publish a book and put it out there. And it's an interesting story. I mean, I'm not going to get into it. You can look at it, and as far as if you really want to go online and find it. But it's called Meeting Uncle Jake, and it ties into a lot of family stuff. And I'm going to talk a lot about family in general. One of the things about family that I think we're losing is just no one has an interest in their past at times. Doing the work and knowing, like, my relatives on my father's side, coming from Italy, coming to Ellis Island and went to New York City and then coming into Jersey. When I started diving into that, it was amazing, right? Thankfully, I started doing it before some of the relatives were had passed away, but a lot of them are gone now, and I don't really have a lot of sources to go to, but I got a lot of information. So hopefully one of these days I'll dive back into it and get more details. But if you haven't done it and you're thinking about it, reach out to everyone you could think of that has some type of key, tied to the past. That's the key, because they're going to tell you things you never knew. Unless you ask for it, they're not going to share it with you. And this is just a little bit of what I plan on doing with this podcast. I hope to do it every week. I think there's always going to be something to talk about every week or so. Again, my goal is the first half of this podcast will be, some of the stuff I'm going through, just the crap we all go through every day, and how do we manage it, and just getting through. There's a comedian that, if you're ever familiar with Bobby Collins, one of my favorite comedians. I think he's from New York originally, but he's out west now. First time I ever saw him was on the HBO specials. Remember the HBO comedy specials? Yeah, back in the mid to late '80s. He said, I don't know if he says it in all of his shows, but and I can't take credit for this because it's so good, but it's so true. You can find it online if you look up Bobby Collins, I'm sure somewhere. But his line is, none of us are getting out of this life alive. We're just trying to get through it. And I don't think any truer words have been said. So, and I've lived by that for several years now, knowing how things are changing. So thank you, Bobby, for always, even in the tougher parts of life, how you kind of make people smile. And I really dig that line. So, and I've seen you several times. If you ever happen to see this, I've seen you several times in the New Jersey area, North Jersey. So, but it's true. It's true. But that's going to be the part of this podcast, or, the first half of the podcast. Talk about things like that. Just everyday things we're going through, how we get through life, and how I'm coping with certain things, and believe it or not, just being able to talk, whether anybody really listens to this, but someone, at least being able to talk is going to be key, I think. And then the flip side, which would be, maybe you'll hear some music, which will be cool, sound like this, right? It's basically just a little, so for the guitar players out there, that's one chord, and it's an F sharp suspended chord, also known as the hemispheres chord. If you're an Alex Lifeson fan, if you're a Rush fan, that's the first chord that comes into the hemispheres story. But it's also the chord that you see on Far Cry from Snakes and Arrows. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, it'll be more lighthearted, the back end of everything, right? And just kind of talking about things in general. There's no rhyme or reason to where this is going to go. It's just going to be something different to tie in some loose ends of everything I have going on. And I don't know, just trying to get creative here and there, because I just feel like there's just, at times, I don't have a way to get through life the way I want to. And this might be a way to do it, to talk to you, tell you what's going on. And, I'm sure a lot of people are going through the same thing I am. Again, if you're a single father and you have a teenage son or daughter and it's difficult with communication, yeah, I'm trying to do everything I can to make that right, and it's funny, this book, I'm not going to, one day she's going to get it. She doesn't have it right now, and I don't think she's ready for it. But it kind of ties in my past life in a way, right? When things, I don't say were better, but it was different. Because, personally, I think things are going really good right now for me. But it's just another part of my life. And one day she'll read it, and I think she'll enjoy it. It's really just kind of a story about, and it ties into what I talked about earlier, family and what's going on, and how do you keep up with family, and how do you keep the communication going on with family. I could talk about family forever, good and bad. We've all been there, right? So, and I hope as this goes along, the production will be a little bit better, right? But I didn't want to not hit record on this because I think it was too important, to be honest. So we'll see how this goes. I hope you stick around. I hope you can kind of hang around with me for a little bit and see how this goes, and we'll go from there. So I don't really know how much more I can tell you right now without just babbling and rambling, but I'm looking forward to this. This will be a good release for me, talk about things. And I know there's other people out there that are kind of either going through or have experienced certain things. And I'm hoping that as I talked more about life in general, just because you're getting older doesn't mean it gets worse. It just means that, you learn how to look at things differently. And something as simple as, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not in New Jersey anymore and I'm down in South Carolina, outside of Charlotte. Even I appreciate sunsets now a little bit differently than I did. It's hard to explain. And one of these days we'll talk about it, but they're just different down here. Is it the air quality? I don't know. But it's just little things like that I'm starting to appreciate much more than I ever did before. And maybe that's just a sign of, getting older and wiser, or just older. I don't know. But it's the beginning. And I hope this goes somewhere. I hope I can make something out of it. I've got a lot of things going on, just all these little projects going on, and I can't seem to get any of them anywhere where I want them to be. This might be something that helps me along. So thanks for coming along for the ride. I don't know. We're gonna go from there. We're gonna just check it out. We're gonna check it out, see how this goes down the road here. I want to try to keep it consistent. That's all I can give you right now. So enjoy anything and everything you've got going on right now. Enjoy the little things. Don't sweat. Don't sweat the small stuff. Life happens. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna go from there. All right, kids. So I thank you. See you later. Bye.